It's time to rip the cover off what really works to ditch addiction, depression, anger, anxiety, and all other kinds of human suffering. No, not sobriety. We're talking the F word here, freedom. We'll share straight from the trenches what we've learned from leaving our own addictions behind and coaching hundreds of others to do the same. And since it's such a heavy topic, we might as well have a good time while we're at it. All right, welcome back to the Alive and Free podcast. Today, we get to talk a little bit differently about illusions and disillusions. Many of you know or may have heard that I've been working on a book for some time. I figure it's time. You know, I've been doing this for so many years, have helped so many people, and it's still there's a lot of coaches and other programs I've seen pop up in this space since I've been around that are all doing things like energy healing methods and tapping and other types of things here and there. Some of them are doing breath work and whatnot, but a lot of them are still stuck in this sort of disease model. This is a problem model, all of those other things. And so I decided it was time to write a book where I lay everything out. Now, the working title of the book, it may not remain this way, is Built for Freedom. I titled it that because it's the truth. Your body is designed for it. It's your birthright. And this is going to cover adventures through stress, anxiety, depression, trauma, PTSD, addiction, and our body's innate ability to let go of them all. So I'm really trying to lay down the building blocks for everybody. And the difficulty in doing that is that I basically, not intentionally and not maliciously, but I kind of have to take on an entire way of thinking of an entire set of industries, because this has been the case for such a long time. And which means that there kind of has to be, I have to take the reader through the first part of the book on this process of essentially disillusionment. Now, nobody likes to be disillusioned. The word disillusionment has a negative connotation in the West. And I remember at one point in time, Sadhguru, he blessed everybody. He's like, let me bless you to be disillusioned quickly. And everybody was like, what? Why would you bless us with that? And he looked at them and he said, what? I'm sorry. You want to live with illusions? You want to live not actually seeing what's real? And they were like, oh, yeah, good point. The thing is, disillusionment comes with a massive amount of relief. The part of disillusionment that everybody hates is the resentment that they create after being disillusioned. And that's my job, to try and give them a new perspective, a massive paradigm shift that feels empowering, to where they don't turn around and resent everybody, but where they can still see what's clear. Now, disillusionment is not just about big things. May everybody who's listening to this podcast be disillusioned from all the things that are preventing you from seeing reality the way that it is. Oh my goodness. And let's talk about small things, right? I don't snore. Why would you want to know if you snored? Well, because snoring is an indicator that maybe you're not breathing well at night. It could cause some health problems. So it's not necessarily bad to find out that you're snoring. But people don't want to admit that they snore because there's some weird taboo about snoring. I don't talk in my sleep. Right. You want to hear something funny? A while ago, I started talking in my sleep. I've probably done it my whole life here and there, and it doesn't happen that often. But I was like, I don't talk in my sleep. I sleep like the dead. No big deal. And so then Jasmine wrote down what it was that I wrote. Here I am. It's the middle of the night, like 2 a.m. And I sit there and I go, late bombers in my head. And Jasmine's like, what do they do? I go, do they bomb everything? Pew, into pixie dust. And she starts laughing. She's like, did it work? And then I got all mad at her. I was like, I don't know. I started talking like it was her fault or something like that. The next day, she asked me if I remembered this conversation. I didn't. Guess what? Yesterday, I got one of those Native American flutes. Finally, it came. I had ordered it a while ago. A handmade flute with several chambers, and I was practicing playing it before bed and whatnot. Then about 3:30 this morning, Jasmine looks at me because I woke up this morning a little bit early and my brain was having an argument with somebody. And she's like, well, were you also playing this? Do you remember playing the flute in your sleep? I was like, no. She goes, around 3:30, you rolled over and went, and we're playing the flute for about a minute right in my face. See, guys, apparently you do keep learning while you're asleep. If you didn't know that, now you know. The point is, if I were attached to the way things were and needed them to be the way I thought they were, that, oh no, I don't do this in my sleep, then I would feel resentful, or I might feel attacked, or I might feel like I was made fun of or embarrassed, but I didn't feel anything like that at all. I was totally free to laugh at myself. And that's kind of the way that we want to do this stuff. Now, I've had disillusionment happen for a long period of time in my life, many times. I remember when I first started teaching Kung Fu, and I had my Kung Fu school. I'd been training for over, I don't remember how many years, a long time, over a decade or something by then. And I started teaching other people, and I had my school. I had my school for like 9.5 years. So it was a good while. And as I was teaching, the first time I saw the UFC championship and Royce Gracie was taking down other people, I realized in that moment that, confronted with the blood that was happening and the way people were getting injured, because that was the first UFC was one where there wasn't really a lot of rules about styles and what needed to happen. This was finally, does Kung Fu beat karate, beat boxing, beat judo, beat jujitsu, and everybody doing their own style. And Royce Gracie just mopped the floor with some people. And I remember feeling utter terror and panic in a recognition that while I had trained ground fighting, I knew deep inside myself that I had no clue what I was doing compared to what he was doing. And I knew that if I got locked in a position like that, I don't know that I would survive. And so then I started questioning all of my ability everywhere. I was like, what if all of the stuff I'd been learning over the years? I mean, we sparred in class. I knew I could get punched and I'd be okay, sort of. It's not like I was really okay with being punched, but I knew I could dodge and avoid, and I knew I had decent footwork and stuff. But I was like, I don't know that any of this has prepared me for a real fight. We've sat here all these years talking about Chinese legends and masters of the past, and we've swung chain whips and double broadswords and nunchaku and rope darts and three-sectional staves and other staves and spears and all of these different types of weapons and tiger hook swords. I mean, you name it. And I still have a bunch of them in my garage. And we practiced with all of these things. And in that space, there was a lot of puffing up the chest and pretending like, oh no, I could have killed that guy. I trained in death touches and learning all of the death points and learning time-dependent points and seriously injured points in the body. And I trained in understanding where those things worked and where they didn't work and all that. Oh, but we can't practice these on each other because, if I hit you in a death point, then you're going to die. So we can't do that. So, and all of a sudden I'm confronted with this video and I realize, like, I have no guarantee that anything I've ever learned is actually effective. I started seeing videos pop up around YouTube and knife attacks and people who had tested out all these different techniques for getting rid of it and how they didn't work. And I had seen my own students, some of them struggle with it. And I had struggled sometimes. I had a student who was like this big, tall Russian who had wrists like an iron bar. And we were supposed to do this wrist lock on him. And I just had to improvise a solution because the one that was supposed to be the technique didn't work on him. And so back and forth, I had all of this doubt showing up. And that doubt was such a gift because it enabled me to start to go and look and question with my own eyes and ears. Instead of just trusting the stories and the proofs and the ideas that I had been living with. And so I was very, very happily disillusioned, even though at the time I was also full of a lot of fear and recognizing that I live in a town that anybody could come challenge the teacher of this Kung Fu school like it actually happens in the US. But, I'd been watching old movies. And so I was still kind of hopped up on those things. And, what if I failed? What if I failed my students? What if I failed all these other things? And so as a result, I went looking and I found Russian Sistema and I trained in some combative Wing Chun and I trained in some other things. And I'm still not a fighter. I don't pretend to be a fighter. I don't pretend to be a great fighter. I move well, but my interest in martial arts, I became more honest with. It's a glorious, exciting movement that shows me exactly all the tension that I'm holding, all the fears that I'm holding, and it helps me learn about myself. It helps me understand myself. That doesn't mean it turned me into a great fighter. I could probably handle my own if I don't freak out or if I'm not taken by surprise and even then I could probably do fine, but I don't know. And I don't want to know. I just keep training for what is best for my life. And so I'm sitting here now so happily disillusioned. I got disillusioned from all of the talk around addiction. as soon as I started looking with my own eyes, when I realized that, oh my gosh, if I don't know how to delete pornographic imagery from my head, or if I don't know how to handle a trigger if it shows up, then I'm just going to have to live my life avoiding all of these things, controlled by them, having curfews, having filters, having accountability buddies. And I realized, oh my gosh, I'm not really free. I've been saying all the words that this was really the way, but I wasn't really free. And there was a wake-up moment, a sort of come to Jesus moment, if you will, that made me realize, holy cow, I have to be honest with myself, and I got to start looking with my own eyes and my own ears. When you start doing that, you recognize that science itself, and so this is part of the project of the book, there's a medical community that comes into play in some of the depression and stuff and addiction. There's the psychological community and stuff, and they've built their stuff on theories that I've talked about many, many times. And those theories get passed on from one to the next, and people continue to expand on them and explore them and whatnot. But the problem with having a theory is that if you're not willing to accept it as just a guess, then what happens is you start to twist reality and twist what you're seeing and interpret it in terms of that theory. It's like putting on red glasses. If you put on red glasses, then everything you see is tinged. The colors are tinged a little bit. You can still discern between them. You can still see where you're going, but it's tinged a little bit. Or if you go skiing and you have slightly yellowed stuff, it does help you to see better in some ways, but it also alters what you actually see. And so it might be helpful, it might be useful, but it doesn't actually accurately reflect reality in some way. It distorts bits of reality, bits of observation, in order for you to see those better. But in the process of distorting those things, it also hides other things that might actually be viable and relevant. And so these theories that show up, we have to recognize that all science is incapable of proving anything. The only thing that has proofs is mathematics, and they have theorems instead of theories. And the difficulty with mathematics is, unless it's based on actual observation of the world, then all mathematics is doing is like somebody talking to themselves, right? I build a sense of logic, and a proof in mathematics means, oh, well, I had this theory and I manipulated it according to all the rules of logic and mathematics that we have, and I ended up with this other one that seems like it could solve this problem. But unless that's tested in the real world, you can have a bunch of mathematical proofs and they don't do anything.
If you or someone you know is looking to drop the F-bomb of freedom in their life, whether that's from past trauma, depression, anxiety, addiction, or any other host of emotional and personal struggles, but they just don't know how or want some help doing it, head on over to thefreedomspecialist.com/feelbetternow and check out some of the things we've got in store for you, or book a call so we can look at your unique situation and get you the help that you're looking for.
Now, granted, physics is the area where mathematics gets tested and whatnot. And so there's theoretical math and there's theoretical and physics and whatnot, but there are people that are testing them. But even those tests don't prove anything. Every test, every conclusion you come to, generally speaking, tends to be a reiteration of the way that you see the world, of your current bias. And the only thing that breaks through those biases are pain and perception. And perception ultimately is it. Actually perceiving what's really there in a way that doesn't filter out the things you filtered out. Pain is something that you are perceiving. Fatigue would be something that you're perceiving. Burnout would be something that you're perceiving. And in doing that, suddenly some part of your system reacts to that, going like, hold on a second, we can't continue this way. So perception is really the thing. You can have a beautiful logical framework for everything that fits with the world, but that doesn't mean it's accurate to reality. So if you take the theories and the ideas that have been given to you about your life, not just, and I mean this with respect to everything. I don't mean this with just respect to emotional struggles and addiction and stuff. I mean with respect to everything, with respect to what is right and what is wrong in society or in your life, with what happens before this life and what happens after this life. There is no sin. There's no moral failing in somebody who has questions. Even in the Bible, there's a come, let us reason together. It's not, hey, come and don't ask any questions and just do everything I say and, silence is golden kind of thing. It's literally like, let's chat. Jacob wrestled with the angel that came, and he won the wrestling match from what I grasp. Of course, he might have broken his hip in the process. But there are these instances where the Jews expect to be challenged by God, but to be able to bring their challenge to him, to test him, to ask him, to like, you prove yourself. And I'm not saying that that's an attitude you should have, but what I am suggesting, though, is that you were given eyes and ears for a reason. And in the scriptural language, let him that hath eyes to see, ears to hear, let him hear. Too many of us are listening through other people's ears and looking through other people's eyes. All the books you've read, that's you listening to other people's thoughts and you looking through their eyes. That's not you looking with your own eyes. The best way to take anything I say or anything anyone else says and see whether or not it's valid is to take it and then look with your own eyes and see if what you're seeing matches. If it doesn't, throw it out. Throw out anything I've said until it matches, until it's helpful, toss it. But don't continue to just trust what everybody else tell you. And also don't continue to trust your own conclusions. Continue to look with your eyes and hear with your own ears. By the way, that means actually perceiving. A lot of people, like Plato of old, will assume that their thoughts about reality are better. But that isn't looking with your eyes and listening with your ears. That is thinking. That is taking some information that you once saw and once heard, and instead of continuing to look and see, redirecting those very brain functions toward thinking and seeing, toward creating imagination on the inside. Your imagination is not reality. It is happening inside of reality. Your concepts are not reality. They are happening inside of reality. And the only way that you will ever see things as they really are, including the path to the kind of freedom and joy and happiness that you want, is to be disillusioned from your own illusions. We have these phrases in society right now. I used to be so big on this. I remember, I loved the superhero stories and supernatural abilities, and I really loved those from the time I was a kid. And I was constantly, as I told you, wishing to have the ability to levitate and even shoot lightning out of my fingers and start fires with my hands and walk on water and apparate and disapparate and all these things. And there are stories that those things are very possible. And I'm still open to the idea that they're possible, but I was seeking them in order to kind of prove that there was something real about me. But I was so stuck in that. And when people would join a career, get a career, and just settle down, and then from my point of view, nothing was ever changing. Like they just settled in and then they were going to be that person for the rest of their life, which may be part of the reason why people assumed your personality was fixed by the time you're 35. Also a theory that people accepted, just like the 10% of your brain thing, until others came along and decided to look again with their own eyes and their own ears. And I would get so upset about people who I was like, I don't see how these people can just settle for this life of mediocrity. I want something more, big dreams, and I have big potential. And I would go and try and do those things. And I'm constantly suffering and stressing myself out to try and do things that felt important and significant to the world. And that may be just a young person syndrome. I don't know. But because there's nothing that any single human does that's significant to anyone else but themselves and whatever other humans are affected by it, the animals don't care unless you happen to be removing their habitat, in which case they only care that their habitat's being removed. They don't really care about what you think. So I was doing that, and I was seeking this kind of great significance. And then I was also chasing dreams, and I was inviting people to dream big. And I had a friend who, he's really big and like, what is your dream? What is your dream? And then, one day I stopped to think like, that's not it. Like, what are we talking about? A person who's dreaming isn't awake. Let's say you woke up this morning and you had a big dream and you woke up and you're super excited about it. It's a dream by the time you're telling me about it. And then I go, okay, cool. Go chase that. Go chase the thing that doesn't exist anymore. This goblin that happened, or go be afraid of that, or go whatever I tell you. If I tell you to go interact with your dream again, you'd look at me like I was some kind of idiot. And yet we teach the young people, you need to have big dreams and you need to go chase your dreams. And ironically, a lot of the people telling the young people to chase their dreams are people that have no dreams and do not chase them. It's kind of funny. It's like this social platitude that we tell people you need to have big dreams. What does that even mean? It means the person is sleepwalking. It means they're not awake to life itself. It means that you're inviting them to miss their life because they are illusioned by their own imagination, by their own memory. They're busy wandering around, processing things, thinking about things, conceptualizing things, and missing what is actually there. I'm not saying any of those processes are bad. Like I said before in a previous episode, these are like garnishes. The byproducts are garnishes to the dish. They're what make it beautiful. They're sometimes it's the extra little added flavor, or the extra little seasoning, or the extra little touch or flourish that makes the thing what it is. The final touches of the brushstrokes on the canvas. But it's not the whole canvas. If all of the details you put in a human eye on a figure painting were everywhere on the canvas, then it wouldn't be a painting that was worth anything. And so everything kind of has its place, but we've taken this thinking and imagining reality and we've taken it to the next level to where we're now entertaining ourselves with other people's thoughts, which means more and more as society grows, all we have to think about are thoughts themselves. Libraries are nothing more than other thoughts talking to each other. They're just people's thoughts, and they're books about people's thoughts, and they're books about people's thoughts. None of that is reality itself, but the smell of the books is, the feel of the book is, the feel of turning the page is, right? The way the ink lands on the texture of the paper, what kind of paper it's printed on, that is, the ink that's making the picture that you think you see there, that's part of reality as well. And your imagination with it, that's also an experience, but that's not the book. Your imagination is confused with it. And the more you're confused about what you think is real, because you're so used to having these thoughts and you're so used to buying into information and you're so used to thinking, and me too, that whatever authorities say is reality, when most of those authorities, they got their information from another authority and they haven't vetted it themselves. There's not a lot of medical doctors that have seen a human cell. Maybe they've seen slides of them or pictures of them, and I'm not saying that they haven't studied them, but with their own naked eye, they haven't seen them. In a microscope, maybe. There's not a lot of them that have watched a lot of human processes in place. And when they specialize, there's a whole rest of the human body that they don't even cover. And yet we look to them for authority because they have experience with the human body more than we say we do, even though you're wired into your body and have lived with it longer than any medical doctor ever has. And yet we gladly hand over authority because they seem like they know some things. What do doctors know about the drugs that they prescribe? If they're not willing to take those drugs right now, why are they prescribing them to other people? And some of the drugs, like I was just at the hospital today going through some preparatory kind of stress testing for an excursion and a trek to the Himalayas I'm doing later on this year. And they were talking about these pharmacological tests that they were doing to try and put people under stress through drugs, basically to get their heartbeats to race and to get these other things. And that's what they're testing, is to see how people operate under those circumstances. And I'm sitting there going like, test it on yourself. That's what I've done with everything that I teach people. I've tested it on myself. There's not a single thing that I'm sharing with people about living happily and living free that I haven't tested and done on myself over and over, that I don't continue to use and continue to explore. That's just how profound it is. But we live in a society that's willing to instead just take another person's word for it, because we all want to have the right answer. And then we wander around thinking we know things when actually we're under an illusion. Until you have seen it and experienced it yourself, you don't know anything. And one of the greatest gifts you could give yourself is finally to admit your ignorance. It has changed my life to admit what I do and don't know. And I still kind of fall into the trap of pretending I know more, but usually as soon as I do that, somebody kind of comes up to me and is like, what about this? What about that? Now, often the case is they think they know and they don't actually know, but they've read some things. The disillusionment in my life has been one of the greatest gifts I've ever received. It has freed me to experience life more completely and more fully. It has freed me to stop judging my family, my wife, my kids, friends, and so many other people. It has enabled me to find deeper connection with the people I work with and with those I'm close to. It's enabled me to really question all the places where I think I'm more important than I really am, and to get deeper in touch with my own living experience. To be alive and to be free of all the illusions that are guiding you, even just 2 degrees over the course of a couple hundred miles, 2 degrees can take you 27 miles off course. You missed the target. So to get rid of the illusions and to no longer be confused about what's there, thinking that you know, to get the mud off the windshield so that you can see more clearly, or the road haze off the windshield, is one of the greatest gifts you could give yourself. And it starts by being willing to say, I don't know. I've heard this. I've read this. I feel this. I think this. And if someone calls you on the carpet and says, you don't actually know that, you'd be like, okay, I've read this or I've heard this. It seems to jive with my experience, and you can ask them there, but it's now you don't have anything to protect. You don't have anything to hide anymore. The reason that you're afraid when people challenge your ideas is because you don't actually know that they're true. If you knew they were true, there would be no fear. Unless they're threatening your life, of course. And that's a really good indicator. If you're afraid of somebody finding something out or if somebody calling you on the carpet or thinking you're a fraud, it's because you're claiming to know more than you do. And one of the greatest things you can do for yourself is to disillusion yourself from all that stuff, to challenge everything, to learn to wake up, to get rid of the haze of dreams and to no longer be confused between the dreams in your head and the reality that you're experiencing so that you can engage with life as it is. And that way you can be happily disillusioned.
And that's it for today's Alive and Free podcast. If you enjoyed this show and want some more freedom bombs landing in your earbuds, subscribe right now at wherever you get your podcasts from. And while you're at it, give us a rating and a review. It'll help us keep delivering great stuff to you. Plus, it's just nice to be nice.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.